Well, a new season of the Florida Grid League has kicked off, and I'm along for the ride. But why? Now, as if I didn't have enough to watch last weekend with semi-finals wrapping up, it also coincided with a new season of Florida Grid League starting. And this year, I have decided to follow that entire season from start to finish and see what the journey is like. Now, an obvious question people could ask is, why, especially as Jason, you've never even been to Florida? Well, I'll be honest, when I first heard about CrossFit, it was all pretty negative. It wasn't until I looked into it for myself, and it's a similar story with Grid League. And then it was through this whole YouTube thing that I came in contact with Kaylee Walsh, who happens to be a player on the Palm Beach Breakers. And I actually made a video some time ago talking about a few things that they do in Grid that I think would be interesting to see applied in some CrossFit competitions. And it's probably at this point that someone would interject and say, hey, we don't want the crazy things they're doing at Grid coming over into CrossFit. The movements are insane. They don't care about standards. And to that, I would probably say, well, last weekend I saw a few no reps being handed out during the Grid matches. And we've seen a lot of criticism over the judging at CrossFit competitions. And I've also heard a lot of people talking about the sort of circus movements that are now cropping up in CrossFit semifinals and at the games. So maybe they're more alike already than people would like to admit. And actually, to go even further, I think there are some movements that we see in Grid that we could definitely see this year at the CrossFit Games. I have one in mind in particular. That is a spoiler for a future video, so make sure you're subscribed if you want to see what that is. But my focus at the moment, it isn't about movements and standards and things like that. It's the accessibility to come in from the outside and start following this as a sport. And when we talk of CrossFit growing as a sport, we have this whole discussion of it being a brand and training methodology first and then a sport second. And with Grid, we see really the opposite, don't we? It's a sport first and foremost, and then you'd go away and train CrossFit or some other specific training to improve your ability to compete in Grid matches. So we're just looking at it as a sport, coming in from the outside. How accessible is it? How easy is it for me to just pick up and start watching and enjoying going on this emotional roller coaster of following a team? And it's going to be an interesting thing for me because outside of CrossFit, I don't really follow any sports, American sports or even English sports, to be honest. And then the why behind all of this is because, well, how can we take these principles and apply them in CrossFit? Because one of the biggest criticisms I heard coming back from semi-finals was how inaccessible that was for people outside of CrossFit. And we know if we want the sport to grow, it needs to appeal to the masses. It needs to be simple to pick up and understand. So that's basically my plan with kind of this following Grid experiment, and it's already quite interesting. There's only been one Saturday where they've had matches, and I've already learnt some lessons. So of course, last week before the season kicked off, the first thing I needed to do was pick my team, the team that I'm going to follow throughout the season. And it would make sense, as Kaylee Walsh was the person that introduced me to Grid in the first place, that I would follow her team. Also because I've had the opportunity to speak to a few of her teammates as well, and they all seem like really nice people. And already, I think that's a fun thing about Grid. They are picking a team, following them through the season, and having sort of their team uniform. It's a lot more like a traditional team sport already. Speaking of which, I suppose I should probably change into some merch. Well, there we go. Hopefully no one will notice that it's actually unofficial merch. I'm sure I'll be fine. But here I was, ready to go. Now, what I didn't know when I picked my team, maybe Kaylee forgot to mention this, was that Palm Beach Breakers hadn't actually won a match since 2019. So I don't know whether or not it was the extra support that I was bringing to the team or not. Scientists can debate this for centuries, I'm sure, but they were able to get their first win over the Venoms that Saturday. So watching the first event, something happened. Now going back to semi-finals, a big criticism that I heard throughout the 3 weeks of semi-finals was the live stream. Well, Grid had its own live stream problem. That's right, halfway through the first match, well, the live stream lost sound. And unfortunately, they never got it back for the next 3 matches either. So that was sort of an entire day of competition. You could see everything, but you couldn't hear anything. So obviously a few days later, I reached out to them just to find out what exactly had gone wrong with the stream, and they wrote back, so I'd like just to tell you what happened. So their reply, they told me that their Livestream company had an equipment malfunction. They were unable to fix or replace it in time for the rest of the stream. And then it said that exasperating the issue is that their expert with the equipment was not able to make the event last minute. Now, they don't know whether he'd have been able to fix the situation or not, but obviously that didn't help. And they've said that when they have a bigger budget for production, they're hoping this kind of thing won't be an issue because of planned redundancies in equipment and staff. But the risks that they're taking at the moment are what they need to do because they have limited resources, and if they want the sport to grow, that's what they're going to have to do. And it was nice they sort of saying that, this isn't an excuse. This is, we have to do better, but this is what's happening. They had a few other issues as well with regards to like the breakdown after the event and things that were people that were supposed to turn up and help that didn't. But the main point they're saying is that they've got a small team that really affects their production and media capabilities, and this is kind of a bit of a look behind the curtain, but their goal is to improve and to kind of have less risks going forward when they can have a bigger production team doing these things. So they highlight something at the end, which actually was a point that I took away from this. So we're watching these events. I've not really followed Grid. I'm watching it. There is no sound. How am I going to know what's supposed to happen in each of these matches? Well, that was kind of a strength of watching Grid and coming in from the outside, was how easy it was to follow. Now, again, if you've just watched some clips of Grid, it looks kind of chaotic when you see everybody on the grid and they're racing and they're back and forth and you don't really know what's going on. But actually, one match is made up of like a set of little mini matches and they have slightly different things that they're doing. And they put up nice graphics to explain, okay, in this one, this is exactly what they're going to have to do. And then it's got a super simple scoring system. So it's 2 points for a win. It's 1 point if you finish second, but you beat the time cap. And if you go over the time cap, well, then you don't get any points. And they keep that score up throughout the match, so you kind of always know, well, okay, they need to win this one if they want to tie, or they need to win this one and they need the other team not to finish in the time cap, and that's going to tie them. So it's very easy, even coming in from the outside, just to follow the score system. But more importantly, the graphics that they keep putting up before each event, you know exactly what the team is about to go out and do, and so you're able to follow it even without someone explaining to you exactly what needs to happen. And I would also say, in defense of Grid, technical difficulties are a much easier pill to swallow than decisions to focus on only a select number of athletes or to not stream entire tests. So already at this point, I'm wondering, is there something that CrossFit could take from Grid's playbook with regards to the graphics they put up or the way they explain or make it visually easy for people to follow what's about to happen in a workout or test? Because if you're ever watching the live stream, you'll see in the comments a lot of people are asking what's going on, what are they doing, what's the next movement, and so on. So there you have it. It looks like I'm not solely focused on CrossFit at the moment. I'm going to be throwing in some Grid videos here and there, and who knows what other functional fitness or fitness racing events I might also be talking about. In fact, if there's something you think I should look into, please let me know in the comments. Of course, if you're just here for Grid chat, well, maybe let me know in the comments the team that you're following, but more importantly, I'll see you in July for the next event.